Hello, BookTube. Shawn the Book Maniac just created an original tag. I believe it's his third, and a pattern is starting to develop in the original tags that he creates. The first one was the take 10 books off your shelf and talk about them, tag, where it's an all-purpose non-specific tag where you just pull 10 books at random off your shelves and talk about them a bit. And then the second was his famous page 112 tag, where you take 3 books from your collection and judge your reactions to them and something of their literary merit only on the contents of page 112. And the third tag, the one that he just did, is the BookTube Parasite Tag, where you pick a video by another booktuber and use it as the raw material for your own video in a discussion, in a reaction, whatever it is, and it doesn't have to be a new video of theirs. And when I looked at these 3 original tags, they're all great. They're all fantastic tags, but when I look at them, I see something in common. And Shawn comes right out and says it in his new video. He says that sometimes booktubers have trouble coming up with ideas for videos. Can this possibly be true? There are more books than I know what to do with out there. Sorry, the camera is joggling here because of the puppy. Actually, it's been a while since Frida has been on camera, hasn't it? Here, your legions of fans want to see you. They do. Oh, they do. Here, look at the camera. Oh, oh yes. You're a good girl. Look at the camera. Look at the camera, baby. Ooh. Hello. How's my little girl? Anyway, where was I? Oh, right. Shawn said in his video that I saw this morning that these tags, this latest tag, but by implication, the previous 2 are also designed to help you if you don't have any ideas for making a video. I can't imagine what that would be like. I could make 10 videos a day and not run out of material. I don't know why anybody... Here, no, don't eat the keyboard. Somebody's a little antsy for her morning walk. We have a very first thing in the morning walk. We have a 6 o'clock walk. It has a set route. It's not meant for variety. Neither one of us is really up for it. It's just, she's gone all night without going to the bathroom. She's been a very good girl all night. So we do the 6 o'clock walk without fail. In any kind of weather. And then we come back and I just dive into reading and she goes into her coma. She does not want to be bothered in the early morning hours. She's just sound asleep. But then now she's starting to get antsy to do a little leg stretching. And the sun is actually out today, so we probably will. But anyway, as a tangential question I wanted to ask, is it true that the rest of you have trouble coming up with ideas for videos? Is that really true? But one way or another, I wanted to do this tag, and I want to do it often, because Shawn stresses in his video. I'm hoping that the stress wasn't just aimed at me, but he stresses in his video that, of course, you shouldn't take this opportunity to attack your fellow booktubers. It's more an ongoing discussion. And yet, there are things that certain booktubers have said over the years that I've been watching BookTube that have kind of stuck in my craw. So I will occasionally be using this tag as a Festivus-style airing of grievances, but not today. The first one I wanted to do was just a reaction to another video that I just saw recently. Juan at Just Juan Reader did one of his recent read videos where he talks about 3 books that he has just read recently. I love his channel. Those of you who aren't subscribed really should go and subscribe. I will leave a link to the video and to Shawn's video down below. I love the variety of his recent reads. And this one was no exception. He showed us 3 books, and I wanted to talk about them a bit. And the first one was Jane Eyre, which he was rather too considerate, I think, to his viewers. He's extremely considerate to his viewers. And he barely talked at all about it because he was worried, as he said, about spoilers. Can we just agree as a community that if something has been in the canon for 200 years, it's been 8 different movie adaptations, 8 different TV adaptations, that we probably don't have to worry about spoilers? I think there are many, many ways to talk about this book. This is the Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition. There are many, many ways to talk about this book that don't give away what I'm imagining was on Juan's mind when he thought about spoilers. There's one particular thing that happens at the end of the book that I'm assuming was on his mind. But you can talk about the rest of it, surely. This is the story that Charlotte Bronte wrote after she'd written. She wrote one novel that was sort of mezza. No, it didn't exactly set the literary world on fire. And then she wrote another. This is a novel that takes the form of an autobiography of a young woman named Jane Eyre, who, in the first few chapters of the book, the first few sections of the book, up to a very specific point, every time that I've read it, the beginning of Jane Eyre has always annoyed me, because Jane Eyre, the character, is full of pluck, and she is confronted everywhere at every turn by horrible adults who only want to beat her and browbeat her and bully her and boss her around, and she simply won't let it get to her. She's got too much vim and vigor for that. She won't lose sight of the true steel of her soul. In other words, the first part of the book is about how great only one character is. And that character is not Jane Eyre. That character is Charlotte Bronte. And that gets a little bit old. But once Jane Eyre, the character, meets the Lord of the Hall, once she falls in love, or starts to, with Mr. Rochester, she changes, and an element of wish fulfillment enters the book that wasn't there before. I mean, you've got all the Gothic novel appurtenances all through here, and the autobiographical thing works in both directions. There's a lot of Charlotte Bronte in this book. Not a lot of the distant three-dimensional creation of a character, much more just mirroring herself. But I think I can speak with assurance here. I of course wasn't there, but I think I can speak with assurance when I say that although Charlotte Bronte did live and marry, she never fell in love with Rochester. She created him. She summoned him out of a large element of wish fulfillment. And I think that's what gives their relationship on the page such an amazing magnetism. It's just an amazing... I reread this book last year. I think it was... in 2016, I found this Penguin copy at the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston. I had been sent it by Penguin, and God knows where it went, but I found the copy again. I don't think this was mine, because I mark every book that comes through my hands. A tiny little mark, so that I can know if I find it elsewhere that it did come through me, and this didn't have my mark. So I'm pretty sure this is not my copy. But when I found it in 2016 at the Brattle, I reread it, and there are big events, 2 big events that happen at the end of the book, and there's all of the windswept, cold, and barren deprivation, the Red Room, all that kind of abuse that Jane suffers at the beginning. And, of course, there's the mad woman in the attic. There's all sorts of strands in this book that command your attention. But, once again, when I reread it, the thing that struck me the most, the thing that was the most joy to read, was the relationship between Rochester and Jane Eyre, between this friendship that develops, in addition to what Katie at Books and Things refers to, I think, very, very accurately, as some of the best intellectual flirting that's ever been put on the page. In addition to that, there's also a friendship that develops, and I just found myself noticing and loving that even more this time around than I did. I'm going to wait a bit. I'm not a Bronte fanatic, so I'm not going to read Jane Eyre every year. I'll wait a bit before I reread it. But I can't recommend it strongly enough. I know that seems really strange, but if you haven't read Jane Eyre, I think Juan would recommend it as well. He seemed to love it, and I do too. But then the next book, he did a complete 180. in terms of style, subject matter, genre, everything. His next book was God Is Not Great by Christopher Hitchens. This was the big atheism book that Hitchens partially dried himself out and partially wrote at the behest of everyone that he knew, because new atheism books were all of a sudden a rage, and the idea was this is a bandwagon that he could jump on to make a ton of money. Hitchens had a long personal history of jumping on bandwagons in order to get attention. He never really thought about making a ton of money off his writing. And this proved that it could be done. And it's a problematic book, very much so. Juan loves it, and I think I do too. But this has become something of a Bible for the whole second, third, and fourth wave of post Hitchens YouTube atheists. And if you don't follow that world, you don't know about that world, you're not missing anything good. The world of new atheism punditry post Hitchens has degenerated into horrible infighting, vicious, systematic sexism. Just it's a sinkhole of horrible attitudes and rotten thinking. And I recently reread this book as well, because I wanted to look past its flaws. Of course, Hitchens wrote this book, and then he went on what he oilishly referred to as his little book tour, where he styled it as an act of great courage on his part, that he would go down into the South and into Texas, all through Dixie and the Bible Belt, in order to debate with the religious, that he wouldn't just do, hoity-toity affairs of book openings and parties on the East and West Coast, but that he would descend into Yahoo land and talk to the actual religious folk. And I cringed every time he said that, and he said it every time he brought up this book, because it's so indicative of the totally blinkered condescension with which he approaches the subject. That if you hear that comment and you think, oh, really? So you were eager to get down into the sticks with the Hicks in order to beat them at their own game, bashing their religion. So I wanted to reread it to look past its faults, to try to look past its faults. It has many faults. It is a scattershot affair. It's not a product of sitting down and thinking about what you're doing from start to finish. Instead, it jerks and hurtles along, and the reason for that is simple. All of Hitchens' books do that, unless they are short enough, like The Trial of Henry Kissinger, where you get the sense that they were written in white heat in pretty much one sitting, or dictated. But unless they're like that, all of Hitchens' other books are drastically uneven, and there's a reason for that, because he was an alcoholic. And he, when confronted with that by brave interviewers, used to say, well, I leave it to anyone else to look at how much I've written and how much I've spoken and how much I've done and ask, could I have done that if I were an alcoholic? I'm not going to answer. I'll just let my work speak for itself. But the people who knew him well knew that was a dodge. And I can tell you with complete assurance, that is a dodge. A highly functioning alcoholic can do all kinds of things. In fact, sometimes they'll overdo. And yet, the one thing they can't do is a prolonged work of concentration. That's the nature of the addiction. They can't do it. Unless they dry themselves out, go into rehab, try to stop. And it's amazing, even a hardened alcoholic, if they do that, in very little time, they can feel their faculties coming back. They can feel a clarity coming back in the morning. They can feel the muscle of concentration getting back into shape. Hitchens partially did that for this book, and I think that accounts for its the greater narrative strength. But looking past its faults was really hard, because this book has a lot of faults, and the main faults are not faults of construction. The main faults are completely intentional. The main fault of the book is that it is intentionally playing tricks on the reader, which is really not good in a polemic. polemics have to be honest. They can be angry, but they can't play dirty pool. And this book does play dirty pool at every turn, virtually every turn. There's hardly a historical subject that Hitchens touches on here, and he knew how to write about history as if he were Thucydides himself. There's hardly a historical subject that he touches on in this book that he touches on with complete accuracy. Hardly one, anywhere in the book. From the trivial, like the comment that has gone on from this book and his lectures about this book to become enshrined in New Atheism. Everybody from Matt Dillahunty to Weist Rhino and everybody in between says it just as a matter of course. They just toss it off. Oh, that every Nazi officer, that every Nazi soldier had on his belt buckle, Gott mit uns, to God with us. And that shows you the depths of depravity that Christianity can descend to. Hitchens thought he was dropping a great A-bomb with that notice. And everybody since then has thought, I'm just going to, I'll mention it blandly. I'll mention it in passing because we've got so many other A-bombs to drop, but that's one of them. No, it's not. No, it's not. Every time I see a new atheist say that, on the belt buckle of I just want to stop them and say, okay, all right, you're at an American speaking venue. You're making a lot of money giving lectures bashing Christianity, so you must have some money in your pocket. Yeah? Every single one of you has money in your pocket. Does that money mention God? Yeah, it does. Yes, it does. Does that mean you're religious? Does that mean you're in a theocracy? No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't at all. It's a completely empty point. Completely. But that's the trivial thing. But there's a deeper problem with this book that I will wrap it up. I won't go on forever about this book. Juan read a couple of sections, and so I feel behooved to read a section as well. This is about World War II. Christianity and the Catholic Church during World War II. Many Christians gave their lives to protect their fellow creatures in this midnight of the century, but the chance they did so on orders from any priesthood is statistically almost negligible. This is why we revere the memory of the very few believers like Dietrich Bonhoeffer or Martin Niemöller who acted in accordance only with the dictates of conscience. See the switch there? The trick there? He says it's almost negligible. The odds are statistically negligible that any of the Christians who acted to save people, to help people during World War II, that it's statistically negligible that any of those Christians acted on the orders of a priesthood. And then he says, this is why we revere the memory of few believers like Dietrich Bonhoeffer or Martin Niemöller who acted in accordance only with the dictates of conscience. But the people who Hitchens is saying didn't save people on the dictates of any priesthood might have saved people on the dictates of their conscience. In fact, all of them did. So the two sentences together don't make any sense. If you actually look at them, they don't make any sense. Yes, we revere Dietrich Bonhoeffer for acting on the dictates of his conscience, although he also acted on the dictates of priesthood. But you're saying that we revere him because he didn't do what he did on the orders of a priesthood. Instead, he did it from internal consciousness. But in the line directly before you say that the many Christians saved people, but they didn't do it on the actions of a priesthood. So that points directly at the problem in this book. Throughout this book, Hitchens insists, and he always did in drunken debates, always said, I simply won't hear it when people say that people have done evil in the name of religion. No, they didn't do it in the name of religion, because that gives them an out. That makes it possible to say that they were misinterpreting. They did something in the name of religion, but they might have been wrong about religion and what religion wanted. No, you can't say that. You have to say they did it directly because of religion, because of the dictates of religion. He never tired of making that point, and all of his faithful followers make it today, that you can't say in the name of religion. They don't even, you'll see them in a debate on their YouTube channel, and they'll intentionally avoid the phrase. They'll start to say it, and then they'll intentionally avoid it, like he was standing off stage instead of being dead. But he never uses it in the opposite direction, ever. If you committed evil, then I really don't want to hear you say you did it in the name of religion. I want you to say you did it because of religion, because religion told you to do evil. But if you did good, well, then it was an accidental byproduct, or you were feeling guilty, or you were misinformed, or you were not acting on the dictates of a priesthood. It's never possible in God is Not Great for anyone to do good because of religion. Instead, they do it in the name of religion. They do it as an accidental interpretation of something wrong. Nowhere in this book, or in any of Hitchens' writing about religion, is there any acknowledgement that Christianity or Judaism or Islam ever exhorts its followers directly to do good. And there's certainly no acknowledgement that a great number of those followers might not have been so inclined had not their religion told them to be. There's never any acknowledgement of that. No, instead, religion poisons everything. It does no good, and it never has, and never mind the baseball stadiums full of people who felt themselves one way or another. They felt a moved on the inside by their faith, whatever it was, and their faith was directly enjoining them to do good. So they did good, when maybe they wouldn't have otherwise. That's a positive. That's not poison. He makes the same point about children. There's a long and lachrymose chapter in here about how religion is child abuse, how you raise children to fear hell and fear damnation and to be terrified that their dead relatives are burning in lakes of fire. And isn't that horrible? And shouldn't all the people who do that be sent to jail for life? Without ever an acknowledgement in the opposite direction. Never a single acknowledgement in the opposite direction. That all of the religions that he takes aim at also teach children that they are loved. That God loves them. That saints and prophets love them. Know who they are and love them. Never an acknowledgement anywhere in anything that Hitchens ever said or wrote that children who perhaps had horrible home lives or felt lonely, whether they had horrible home lives or not, might have taken enormous comfort from that. From being told you are loved. There's nothing like that in this book. So I reread this, I think also in 2016. It's just a coincidence on Juan's part that he picked two books that I could bloviate about, and was even less impressed. I am perfectly happy to cite Hitchens when he's good, but this book, although it's revered as a Bible by so many people, is not good. And it's not good not because it's not eloquent. It's eloquent from first page to last. It's not good because it's not fair. It lies to its readers. Anyway, the third book that Juan brought up is by Karen Russell, the author of Swamplandia. And it's St. Lucy's Home for Girls Who Were Raised by Wolves. It's a collection of short stories, an early collection of short stories by her. I don't have a copy because it struck me as average. And I got the impression, again, Juan is the nicest person on BookTube. I got the impression that it struck him as average too. A couple of stories stuck out and have stuck in his mind, and most of the others have not. And he's right when he points out in his video that is just an endemic problem of short story collections. There's almost none that are perfect from start to finish. Drown being a case in point, but there aren't many examples like that. But I recently reread, I didn't reread the whole of the book, but I reread two or three of the stories that were in it. And although they didn't impress me as stories, they didn't impress me as actual narrative constructions, I was really impressed by the language, and that made me remember that I really like a lot of the ways that Swamplandia is written. I'm not as enamored of it as Juan was. His eyes glazed over when he talked about it, and I know it has a lot of other fans who really love it, and I don't love it to that extent. But the thing that I remember most about it, the thing that struck me the strongest about Swamplandia and about this short story collection, is how energetic the prose is. How memorably energetic the prose is, how beautiful it is and memorable, how twisty and funny it is. As though Karen Russell had taken all of the static momentum in English language storytelling and just sort of rethought it all. And I really like that feeling. I get that feeling in her fiction. It's the main reason that I think that she has an absolute masterpiece of American letters coming in her somewhere. that I can just picture it. I can picture her going off for 2 years. Maybe she's doing it now, and writing just a magnificent book, something that makes people say, "Wow, I loved Swamplandia, but it's nothing compared to this." She is one of a short list of American writers where I would say I predict that book will come. But anyway, the Christopher Hitchens, I could do a whole hour on Christopher Hitchens, and that made this video go long. But that is the BookTube Parasite Tag that Shawn came up with, which is find something. Doesn't have to be new. Find something on BookTube that you want to respond to in some way, not necessarily argue with. I think that Juan liked God Is Not Great a lot more than I did, but I'd be willing to bet that if he and I sat down and talked about his strengths and weaknesses, we'd be in large agreement on it. So you don't have to argue with the person, but find something that you want to respond to, whether it's a book haul or a book review or a discussion video or anything. And I like it, especially if it serves its purpose, which apparently is to help people make BookTube videos. Is I want more BookTube videos. I want as many as I can get from everybody. And apparently some of you have problems coming up with ideas for videos. So if that's the case, you should definitely try it. So give a try to this tag. And like all the other original tags that Shawn has done, it's wide open. So there's no season or occasion for it. There are no specifics for it. You can pull it out of your bag of tricks at any moment and do it. So feel free. It's a great way to start discussions between channels. Or in my case, to alienate people, because I'm going to pick on people too, but not this time, not the inaugural time. So I'll wrap this up for now, but I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.